Hello there and welcome to the studio. Today I'm going to address the first question that you're going to ask me. Why am I wearing this hat? And the reason that I'm wearing a hat now, as you recall, a couple videos ago I mentioned that my eyes were hurting, and I think that was because of the strain that I was putting on my eyes with those studio lights. Now I'm not a professional in terms of video, like broadcasting and all that stuff, so I'm learning as I go. But one thing that I'm starting to learn is that having those lights, those studio lights, exposing my eyes to those studio lights for a long period of time, pretty much almost every single day, is probably not good for my eyes. So that's why I'm going to be wearing a hat. See how I can kind of tip the hat to block out pretty much almost all the light, just so it's a little bit easier on my eyes. And I don't know, I like wearing hats once in a while. So on the palette here we have titanium white, flake white, burnt umber, alizarin permanent, cadmium red medium, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, ivory black, and our painting medium is neo Megilp. Someone asked me the other day, they're having trouble finding alizarin permanent. I think I might have mixed it up in a couple of videos, or I don't know, but I think I accidentally said this was Winsor one day. But no, this is Gamblin's alizarin permanent. So in case you're wondering where the alizarin permanent came from as opposed to alizarin crimson, the alizarin permanent comes from the Gamblin brand. So I'm going to do something a little bit differently with the paint mixing. And so this is what I'm going to do temporarily or permanently. I'm going to use this little bar here on my palette to help support, or on the easel to help support my palette, and then I'm going to hold it at the same time. But this camera angle I think will be a little better for you to see my paint mixtures. Again, I've been kind of experimenting back and forth with different camera angles. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to use a little bit of my medium first, my neo Megilp, and I'm going to go into some cadmium red and some yellow ochre. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix up a base flesh tone. So just starting out very simply with the cadmium red and yellow ochre, and I'm going to tint it with a little bit of burnt umber, but just a tiny bit of the burnt umber, not very much, just a little bit of that. And then we're going to add the titanium white over to this little area here of the palette. And I'm also using a different palette, again, because the other palette that I enjoyed using in that larger painting demonstration, the one with camera angles very similar to this one, I think that the surface just got a little bit too rough, and it made it a little bit harder. At least I noticed it made it a little bit harder to follow along with the paint mixture. So hopefully with this camera angle, I know, I think most of you would want the the palette to be right next to the painting, but I did notice that that does make it a little bit harder to see the mixtures. So I'm trying to optimize the camera angles here just so you can see the mixtures. And of course I am down to one camera, so I will be moving my camera around to get kind of the effect of multiple cameras. So this is going to be kind of my base flesh tone. And now we have our model Samantha, and I'm going to keep an image of her to the top left corner of your screen. So now again you're seeing another different kind of thing with the studio setup. So recently I went to watch the live stream of the Facebook Live of Studio Incominati, and I was really inspired by the way that they had the paintings in the background and kind of like the focus that the cameras had on the painting, and then contrasted with the blurred out background. I thought that was something pretty neat. So hopefully what my concern is that the photo reference that's on the top left corner of your screen, I hope it doesn't get confused with the paintings in the background. I may change the paintings in the background a little bit, or I might just put the dark curtain in the background again. I don't know. I have to look at this footage after it's all done to make that decision. But let's go ahead and put in our little base flesh tone. And this painting is going to be a kind of, how do I call it? Like a no outlines painting. So I'm going to just start off with a very simple kind of mass for where I think Samantha's head, or where the model's head, is going to fit. So I'm supposing that the model's head is maybe a little bit on the top here. Now I know that this color is nowhere near correct, but again, this is just to get an idea of where to place the head. So I'm thinking somewhere along the top. Like I usually do, I place the model's head to the top, just trying not to center it, although maybe one of these days we'll center it just to get that kind of psychological effect of kind of drawing your eyes towards the center, who knows. But for today, we're just going to keep it very simple. Now, another thing that I've been struggling with my painting videos is also the amount of time to show you throughout the day, because I can paint a portrait in one day, no problem. It's just, I don't want the videos to get too boring. So I'm going to add a little bit of titanium white to the mixture. And now we have an even more elaborate flesh tone. But again, this is just to cover the area where I want the head to fit. So now what we're going to do, we're going to return to the palette. And again, I'm hoping with these camera angle changes, you will be able to see the mixtures with a little bit more clarity. So anyway, in any case, what I'm going to do now is get a little bit of burnt umber as kind of a drawing color, a little bit of yellow ochre, just burnt umber, yellow ochre, and some cadmium red. And now with the flesh tone brush in hand, so I have the flesh tone brush here, and then I have the drawing color. So what I'm going to do is just make a shape for the eye socket. Just a very simple shape, and then maybe a little mark right there for where the eyebrow may fit. So that's one eye socket, and then here we're going to put in a mark for the next eye socket. And while we're doing this, we're going to think about the angle. So the angle is somewhat like this. Now again, I'm working from photo reference, and the photo reference is on a TV screen that is a little bit further away from me. I don't like having the photo reference like right next to the painting, because I'm not really trying to copy what I'm looking at. Rather, I'm trying to interpret visual information, as many of you have heard me say so many times. So we're starting off with the eye sockets, and very quickly we're going to move down here towards the nose. So again, just making a little shape for where the nose may or may not fit. And we're just thinking of shape. Just thinking of shape. This is going to be a no outlines painting. And you know me, I don't really know if I'm going to be able to create this portrait all in one sitting. So this might be the start of a long process, but who knows, we'll see. One thing that I'm really thinking about is like I mentioned before, the amount of time that I let each video run. So I've been experimenting with shorter videos and kind of splitting them up into segments, but I find that that's kind of dropping down my views. So I don't know, I might just paint them and edit them very similar to my older videos, my portrait painting tutorials. Remember back in the day when I used to upload them only once a week? And of course now you know I'm uploading them every single day just about, so we'll see. So again, I'm not really drawing any kind of details, and I'm not using too many kind of outlines. See here, quotation marks. This is all a shape. Even though it may resemble an outline, this is about shape. So straight right across, the shape is going all the way over. And I'm not really thinking about the mouth too much. I'm just kind of thinking of the overall shape of the mask of the head, and this goes all the way down here, and then the form starts to turn in towards here, and then we start making a little journey this way, all the way over, and then there we have the side of the face. And you know what, let's throw in a little shape there for the neck, and it doesn't have to be in the perfect spot. Again, we're going to use this flesh tone brush kind of as an eraser, just kind of like an eraser. So let's return to the palette, and at least to my viewfinder, this looks like a much better camera angle, but again, I won't really know until I look at the footage. Hopefully you're enjoying a much more clear and crisp image of the palette. So just with a little bit of cadmium red, Alizarin permanent, we're just tinting the drawing color to be a little bit warmer. with this same brush. This is a very cheap brush. It's a Plaza Montgomery size 1 round brush. Very cheap brush. It doesn't require anything fancy. Also take note that the camera is at an angle with respect to the painting, so that I don't work with the camera right in front of my face, because that would be kind of difficult to do. So we're putting in this darker, warmer color right over here for the concavity of the eye socket. But you know what? It might be a little bit too, I don't know, maybe a little bit too neutral, but I think it'll be okay for now. I just want a little bit of a darker shape for the concavity of the eye socket. And we're going to go ahead and follow through with that shape over here as well. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add just a little more burnt umber to that mixture and try and get the dark. See that? So very quickly now we're trying to get the dark for the eyebrows, and we're going to be locking on to the eye sockets, and we're going to be building from the eye sockets. And again, this is just to show there is not one way, there is no one way to construct a portrait or to paint in general. And if there's one way, that way is the one that works for you. Pushing that shape down a little bit. And now with this darker brush, I'm going to go ahead and, this darker color, which is pretty much just burnt umber, we're going to go ahead and lock in where the tear ducts are going to fit. So maybe one tear duct is there, and I don't know, the other tear duct is there. And again, we're just using shape, so there's not going to be an outline for this. Notice we kind of bypassed the burnt umber drawing stage, so we kind of bypassed the umber sketch. And instead we're going straight for the shapes. This goes all the way down here. And let's see, all over here. And just a simple shape for where the eyes are going to fit. And now that we have the eyes kind of placed in there, we're going to return to the flesh tone brush. We're just going to push this shape up, and we're going to want to work with this posterized image of the portrait for quite a long time. So now I'm going to go ahead and revisit the shadow shape beneath the nose, and I'm going to add a little more of a reddish tone to that. So we're going to put in a little more cadmium red and the yellow ochre. We want it to be a little bit lighter and a little more red. And so we're going to pay very close attention to this shadow shape. Goes all the way down here. And we're going to think about just kind of a two-dimensional shape for the shadow. Again, there's no one way to complete a portrait. I know that what I'm doing right now is very contrary to a lot of the stuff that you've seen me paint. And again, I think it's really important to have multiple approaches. Don't get stuck and caught up with just one and thinking that just one way will be the way. So again, we're moving this shape over. Now then, I don't really want to do too much for the mouth, so I'm going to just, a few brush strokes is all that it's going to take. So one here for the corner of the side of the mouth, and another to pinpoint the other side of the mouth, right over here, and then we're going to have kind of the center of where the mouth is going to fit. Bottom, just a few little marks here and there. I don't want too much, just a simple little shape, because that mouth is probably going to move more than anything in this picture. The mouth is the thing that will always need adjusting. It's just the nature of portrait. So now what I'm going to do is create a little value scale on the palette. And again, my hope with this palette setup is to create the most crisp and clear paint mixtures possible. So a little bit of titanium white, neo Megilp, titanium white is an opaque white, and it doesn't take much to raise the value quite a bit. It's a very strong color. And so when we move into the mid value range, so I'm going to be using a different brush for the middle value range. This is a clean and dry brush. So now that we're in the middle range of the palette, I'm going to go ahead and use the other white. Many folks have been asking, why do I have two whites? So here, this is pretty much why I have two whites. So now I'm using the Flake white, and Flake white is a color that's going to live somewhat in the middle range of the value scale. And that is because Flake white has this property that allows you to use more of it. Notice how much of it I'm using, and notice how it's not raising the value that much. So it allows me to use more of it without raising the value too much. Thus, it allows me to create more of a body, a heavy body to the oil paint, which allows it to have a little more thickness, basically. But you can get by without using Flake white. If you really don't want to use Flake white, that's okay. You just need to use a tiny bit less of the titanium white, tiny bit less, or maybe a lot bit less of the titanium white, and more of these guys right over here. And if you're new to this channel, if this is your very first time watching, and you want to know exactly what materials I'm using as far as the paint brands and the brushes and all of that stuff, you can always go ahead and scroll down to the description box below, and all of that information will be typed up for you. So now I'm going to take out a different brush. So this is another clean and dry brush, and we're going to mix up the darker region of this value scale, and we're going to just go right for my favorite mixture. So my favorite mixture is Alizarin Permanent and Sap Green, and I did put in a little bit of Ultramarine Blue by mistake, but you know, it's okay. And that being said, that leads us to question of the day. What is your favorite color combination? Mine is Alizarin Permanent and Sap Green. I know they're complementary colors, red and green, but I do like mixing those colors together. I feel like it creates a nice and rich, kind of neutral flesh tone. So, question of the day, what are your favorite colors to mix on your palette? So now we have this very simple value scale of flesh tone on the palette. And so what we're going to do is something that many of you may hate, and that's okay. Everyone is entitled to their own preferences in terms of how they want to create paintings. So I'm going to return to this brush here with this kind of shadow color, and I'm going to keep this brush on the side here just so I can refer to the shadow color. And we're going to look at the eye socket. So somehow I have two of these brushes. I don't know how that happened. So this is going to be the shadow one. This is going to be kind of like the dark. So let's take this dark here, and we're going to push the dark for the side of the tear duct. So that's the tear duct right there. It's a very nice and rich dark that we're putting in and darkening the area right around, and over here just getting some of our darks. And we're going to throw in some dark here in the middle for where this the iris is going to fit. I don't want to do too much for that just yet. And so the next thing I'm going to do is get a different brush and get into the mid-range of the flesh tones. Right into here. So we're going to start to put in very quickly now the gradation of tone. So here's a little bit of light, and see how quickly we're going to start to get the form to read. But here's the trick. We're basically doing many steps all at once. That's what this kind of technique will do for you. It does make drawing a little bit difficult. So if you're new to painting, I would suggest looking at the traditional approach, and I have many videos on the traditional approach in my YouTube channel. So if you're new to painting and you're new to this channel, I'd recommend using the traditional approach to learn how to paint. And this is going to be a much faster way, but also, again, fast and furious in a sense, because it is alla prima in nature, meaning we're painting wet on wet. So just know that it's going to make the process a little bit more difficult for those of you that have less experience with drawing. So I'm going to put in only what is necessary for the eye to read at a distance. And it's really important to optimize your brush marks. Optimize your time. You don't want to spend too much time on one area, especially in the beginning. So again, now we're going to move on to this area, and there's only a little bit of light over here. And I do know that the flesh tone is not correct just yet. It's a little bit too orangey, and that's okay because as I mentioned in my older videos, sometimes it's easier to go warmer first and then cool off the colors, and we're going to use that kind of thought process for this painting. It's a very chill, very relaxed painting. Now returning to the palette, we're going to mix the ivory black and the titanium white. So just ivory black and titanium white right now. Ivory black, titanium white. A little bit of our Neo Megilp. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit of flesh tone. See how we're just getting a little bit of flesh tone? And so those of you that have been watching my videos for a while, you might know what color or where exactly this color is going to fit. And if you know where I'm going to put this brush stroke down, feel free to comment down below now. So where do you think this color is going to fit? A little bit more flesh tone. So we want something that's cool but not ice cold, and we want it warm but not towards the pinkish area, if you know what I mean. And if you commented down below the sclera, you are absolutely right. So we're going to put in light for the sclera. And remember, the sclera is the white of the eye. And one thing you'll hear me say a lot is that the white of the eye is not white. It's more of a halftone. And you can definitely see that here. I'm not really making it too bright. And we're going to do the same kind of thing across over here. Super simple. And now I'm going to return to the dark brush. We're going to return to the dark side, and we're going to add a little bit of light, or sorry, a little bit of color to the iris. And right about now, the hat is really helping me out. One thing I didn't think of was the hat could get into some of the shots, so I hope the hat doesn't block any of the footage. So yes, my eyes do feel much better now. So there's a little bit of an angle here that we need to describe. So we're going to push that down a little bit, and we're going to get the shadow brush. And we're going to push this down ever so slightly. So portrait is the story of how a bunch of little things either made my day or ruined my day. But it's not even that serious. I mean, portrait is something that takes time, it takes patience, but it relies heavily on drawing. Very heavily. Now a little bit of a dark shape here. And drawing is something that I feel like anyone can learn. Drawing is a very learnable thing, and portrait is based on drawing. Therefore, anyone can learn portrait. So if you're sitting there watching this at home wondering, how on earth am I going to learn how to paint portrait, or maybe you're just getting into painting, you can do it. You can do it. Just pay attention to shape. That's going to be my best advice to you right now. Shape. And that's what we're using for this part of the painting, just shape. Now returning to the palette, we want a very nice and rich dark. So I'm going to use Ivory Black and Alizarin Permanent. And at this point, I have not cleaned any of my brushes, so there's no mineral spirits out. And one thing that I've learned recently is to kind of designate a brush for a specific area on the painting. So the sclera is going to have its own brush. The lighter values of the flesh tone is going to have its own brush. The middle values are going to have its own brush. And then this dark value, has its own brush. So let's suppose I want it to be a little bit warmer in the shadow. So suppose it's going to be the dark for the nostril, and I want it to be a little bit warmer in the shadow. And that's how I'm going to do it. Just in that area of the palette, just tinting it with the cadmium red medium. And so we're going to just add a little bit of a warmer touch to the shadow color directly beneath the nose. And I'm going to get the fan brush. You may not see it on your angle, but from my point of view, it's glaring quite a bit. And so this fan brush just really helps to cut back on glare. Now that I have that dark shape, I'm going to go to the dark accent of the nostril. And the goal is to go for what is necessary, and only for what is necessary to describe the form. So a little bit of dark there. Notice how the face is now starting to read. Do not worry about the color. The color is something we can always adjust later. A little bit of a dark shape right there. Now I'm going to return to, let's get a clean brush. See how easily we can move this down. I did not say a new brush, just a clean brush that I haven't used yet. Just to push that shape down. Now the next thing I'm going to do is address the mouth. So let's suppose we just use the same colors that we had here. So again, the corner of the mouth is probably going to have to move up to here. And again, the mouth is something that is going to move. It's going to move a lot. Don't worry. Don't put too much information for the mouth. Just follow along with me and take note of how much information I'm putting in for the mouth. Be very, very observant. The two most important things are the corners, because a line is a pathway between 2 points. 2 points here will give me the kind of axis of the mouth. And then the center right around here. And at this point, I think it's really important to stop and to stand back. And I'm standing pretty far back. And I'm about maybe, I don't know, 5 to 6 feet away. And I'm noticing that the face is now, it's starting to read a little bit better. And I have basically two options. I could probably just go right into all the values and start to put in the dark of the hair, the dark for the background, and all that stuff. Or I can go into now the modeling, the form modeling for the face, and then render it the best that I possibly can, and then let that build into the background. So I'm going to take some time to think about that decision. And I think that maybe, just maybe, this time I'm going to go into more of the form modeling of the face and really bringing the face to life. But at the same time, maybe, just maybe for the darks, what I'm going to do is put in the dark shape surrounding the edge of the hair, and then maybe just a little hint of the cast shadow on the neck, and maybe no more than that, just so that I can move very quickly with the structures of the face. And so the brush that I used to mix up the darker shapes, I'm going to use the same brush. So I'll tell you what, I want the red to influence a little bit of the dark. So I want a little bit of heat in the dark shape for the hair, just so it's not, I don't know, a generic dark shape. I want there to be a little bit of warmth and a little bit of Neo Megilp. And now remember, I'm not going to use any outlines, so instead I'm going to look at the shapes. So there's a little shape of hair right there. We don't care, just wherever. Right around here. And of course I'm joking. It does matter where we place down the shape for the hair. So here is the flesh tone brush. So I'm adjusting ever so slightly, the angle there for the forehead. So the forehead, or at least the front of the forehead right here, is going to be receiving a little bit more of a curve. So there's a little bit more of a curve, and I'm just bouncing back and forth between the brushes right there. So now we have a much more specific edge for that area. And we're going to go into the side of the forehead, so this shape goes all the way down here. And you may be saying, that's an outline. You used an outline. Nope, I'm not using an outline. This is a shape. And it's getting a little bit too cool because it's kind of getting the flesh tones in it a little bit. So a little more alizarin permanent should do the trick. And just looking at this shape here, we're trying to get the angles of the side of the face, knowing that we're not going to get it just right away. It is going to take some time. And remember, the mouth is something that's just going to move a lot. That's just the nature of it. And along with that, pretty much this entire shape here is going to be kind of in flux for a while. We're going to hone our attention into this area, and then we're going to return to the rest of this afterwards. So this goes over, then down. And I don't want to do too much for that just yet, so let's just leave it at that. Now let's look at the eye. So I think that there's a little more of a shape right here. And again, no outlines. No outlines needed. So there's a little bit of a darker shape there. And while I have this shape, now I have control over the size of the forehead. So this is now kind of like clay in the sense that I have now the ability to mold these shapes however I want. So let's look at the peak of convexity, meaning the top of the curve. So the top of the curve is maybe somewhere around here. And again, the hairline has a very soft and subtle edge. So we're just going to keep these edges very soft, very subtle. It's a little more flat here. She has a very heart-shaped structure to her frontal region of her skull. Notice that this is more of a heart type of shape here. And that's one way you can obtain a little closer likeness to your models. If you observe and maybe just like ask yourself, does the model's head have a little more of a heart shape or a little bit more of a square? Maybe sometimes it's like a triangle. Super simple. Now there's a straight line. Whoa, we're in trouble. A shape. See this? I'm looking at the entire shape. So we're going to recharge the palette. So the same mixture, Ivory Black, Alizarin Permanent, with a little more Megilp. There we go. And we're going to let the brush strokes, notice how we're letting the brush strokes play a little bit. And we're going to let the brush strokes suggest some of the light in the hair. Going to be careful not to go too high though. Now remember, this is usually the case. Now the tear duct to the chin is equal to the tear duct to the top of the head. So we're still in pretty good place there. Usually. Depending on the perspective, of course. And again, notice how we're getting the effect of the hair. Super quick. Super simple. And now the next thing we're going to do is get a little bit of a color now for the cast shadow. So a little bit of burnt umber, yellow ochre, sap green, and a little bit more sap green. So this color ought to do it. A little bit of our Megilp. And again, if you're new to painting and you're wondering what this little gel thing does, what it does, it helps to increase the fluidity of the paint without the need of adding in, say, your mineral spirits to thin out the paint. And it just helps to increase the flow of the paint. And we're going to put this shape all down towards here. and that's going to be for the shadows. And let's go ahead and put that shape here too, because there is a little bit of a shadow down there. Nice and simple. Now the chin is pretty flat there. Now it's going to turn in towards here. And then we're going to have a very almost kind of straight line there for the neck. So let's go ahead and look for that brush that we had for this very dark shape. See how just with shape alone we're starting to get the kind of the effect of form. No tricks, no magic, just shape. So again, let's return to this color. Very simple. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the shape now. The side of the mandible. It's pretty straight. Then turns into here. And I know you're thinking, well, why don't you have a bigger brush? And I don't feel like it. I'm just going to use this brush and that's it. Just to get a little bit of a shape there. And now I'm going to return to the dark brush. So returning to the dark side, let's go ahead and push this shape in a little more. So I'm seeing a little more mass around here. And it's a little more quiet over here. So it's a little more skinny over here. Now the model is very close to being in a profile view. She is 3/4 but closer to profile. So what that means is her proportions are going to be such that if she was in profile, the chin to the top of the head would equal basically the furthest point out here to the back. Meaning the head is like a perfect square. This to this is this to this. And though that's not entirely the case in this view, we can still kind of generalize that kind of effect. All that means is that we're just going to add a little more to the back of the head here just to be safe. That's all that means. And now you're really starting to see that I'm not copying the photo reference. I'm interpreting visual information. That's what I'm doing. So again, working with shape in this way is kind of a way to bypass the longer and more tedious classical approach, but the classical approach, I will say, is much safer, especially if you're a beginner. And now the next order of business is going to be to start to bring these inner shapes to life by modulating the values. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get a kind of a little bit of an array of colors and brushes. So I'm going to have just 3 of them on the palette here. And so this brush has the color of the sclera. So I'm going to kind of leave that alone. So this is the color of the sclera, and then we're going to have the dark. Let's get another brush. So here's the dark for the shadow. So that's the dark for the shadow. Hopefully it doesn't roll. I'm gonna leave that there. Dark accent. Gonna leave that there. And then we're gonna have kind of a. Hopefully this is clean. Yep, a kind of clean brush, kind of like a smudging brush or kind of an eraser brush. And then again, the sclera. I'm going to leave the sclera alone. And then we're going to have the all-important light brush. And this brush is going to live somewhere around here. And this is going to be kind of where all the action is going to take place. And so now we have just entered into the most time-consuming part of this painting. So this is not the most difficult thing, but this is going to be the kind of thing that's going to take a little bit more of our time. So just bear with me here. So we're going to use, this is the clean and dry brush, and just clean it on the side of the painting. We'll make a mark there. And we're kind of using the clean and dry brush to kind of blur the shapes. And so again, this is going to be a very fast, simple, and easy way to construct a painting. Well, to construct a portrait. And so that noise, I don't know if you can see it from that camera angle. So that noise is just me cleaning off the brush, kind of smudging brush on the side. That's all I'm doing. So again, this is very different to the classical approach. It's kind of different to almost everything I've been doing up until this point. And it's good to do things differently once in a while. Maybe not as often as me. I'm trying different things pretty much all the time when it comes to painting. It's kind of funny because I'm the exact opposite in real life. Like in real life, I have the same kind of restaurants I like to go to, and I pretty much almost exclusively go to those restaurants. And whenever there's a major change, I'm like, no, I want to go to my favorite Vietnamese soup place, and now I can't go there because I'm too far away, or I don't know, just and the Thai food that I like to eat, now it's too far away from me. Anyway, in life, I'm pretty much the opposite of this. I like things to be very same. I don't like too much change. But in painting, I'm changing all the time. A little bit more light here to describe the forehead. Gonna add some touches of light here. And at the same time, we're using a lot of titanium white, and that is also going to increase the, it's going to cool down the colors basically. So we'll get a much closer flesh tone. And I think I'm going to want kind of a warmer halftone brush. So we're going to just get a little bit of cadmium red into this region of the palette, just to kind of tint the flesh tones a little bit warmer. And we're going to put this kind of warmer pinkish halftone into here. And it's a little bit too hot. So the reason I have you at this camera angle now is so how you're going to be able to see now how I kind of move back and forth between the value scale on the palette. So we're just tinting all of this area now. Warmer. Obviously, that's too warm, so that's just pushing the light, or sorry, that's pushing the chroma a little bit too hot, so I can come back in, say, with this brush here, and just kind of play with the color till I can get it just right. No need to rush. Now, I'm going to go into this little darker region of the palette, and then right over here. So this is going to be interesting because I'm going to have close-ups of the palette now, and I'm going to have kind of far away shots of the palette, which is what you're seeing. So this might be a little less helpful for what colors I'm mixing, and the reason that I've chosen this angle is just because I'm just going back and forth across the palette. So I'm not really going to be mixing as much as I'm going to be just dabbing right into the palette. See what I just did there? Just dabbing right into the palette. And we're gonna close in, we're gonna zero in now on these forms. And the goal, the real trick to all of this is going to be to put in only what is necessary for the forms to read. You don't want to do more than what is necessary. And how do you know what is necessary? Well, you have to stand back. See how I'm pretty far back? And you have to know that you're not copying what you're looking at. You're interpreting visual information. A little bit more pink. So again, we're going to throw this whole area down here a little bit pinker. Very simple there. Now after all this is said and done, we will return to the outside shape and just make it even more exacting. See how I'm just taking right from these brushes. Shape goes in a little bit more right there. Then tell you what, get the lighter brush. Let's get some cooler color right into here. So like I said, this is going to be the most time-consuming part, not necessarily the most difficult. Not necessarily the most difficult. And so the eyes, I really want to be far away, because at least one of my tendencies is just to stay in the eyes for like the entire day, and that's just not necessary right now. I'm more or less just looking at these shapes, and I kind of just obliterated the side of the white of the eye, the sclera, and that's okay. Noticing that the shape of the eyes needs to get a little bit longer, and that's okay. And again, I have you pretty far back instead of in close-up, just because I want you to see kind of from the same perspective that I'm seeing, just so you're not seeing everything in close-up all the time, because it's important to get some perspective. I challenge you at home to stand further back now with your paintings. After watching this video, let's stand a little bit further back with our paintings while we're working. Especially with this setup here, like this impedes me from being like right up close on the painting, which is good. It's a good thing. And that is Mr. Taco barking upstairs. Don't know if my microphone can pick it up. So now for the mouth, I'm going to return you to close-up shot of the palette. And using the pinkish brush, I think that the value for the mouth is going to live around here. So with just a little bit of cadmium red and some titanium white and a little bit of alizarin permanent into this region of the palette. Again, now you're in close-up shot because I'm actually mixing instead of just dabbing onto the palette. A little bit of alizarin permanent. And you are now once again further away from the painting. I know it might be weird because the photo reference that's somewhere up here is forward in perspective, whereas the camera is on the side, but you know, I'm doing the best I can with these camera angles. So a little bit more of a pinkish color. And again, stand very far back. We don't need much more than this. And after that, it's really going to be about just fine-tuning now all of these smaller shapes. Now, after spending a little bit of time on the smaller shapes, the more specific shapes within that larger framework that we already established, I think that it's now time to start to drop in the most emphatic darks and maybe some of the little highlights here and there to try to pull the form into more focus, well, the forms that we want to delineate a little more. And now the next thing to figure out really is if I even want to put in the information in the background. I'm thinking I kind of don't, but we'll see. I think I might just want to put the rest of the dark for the hair, and then maybe a little suggestion of where the shoulders should fall. Again, this painting is really about kind of just like focusing on shapes and not necessarily relying too heavily on outlines. Now it's good to use outlines. I'm not going to lie to you about that. I use outlines a lot in the classical approach, but for this kind of alla prima, very quick and simple and easy approach, I think it's kind of necessary to kind of push the idea of shape, seeing things in terms of shape and not relying too heavily on outline. And another thing I should talk about is the hat. Yeah, I know. It looks weird on my head maybe, but it's actually helping out with my eyes. My eyes don't hurt quite as much because, again, I'm in shadow. Now I'm not in shadow. I'm in shadow. Not in shadow? In shadow. Yeah, the shadow helps my eyes, and I think it also helps me see value a little bit more clear. So I wonder, do you wear a hat when you paint? I've seen a lot of other painters that actually wear like a hat, like the little baseball hat or something, to block out some of the extra light. But anyway, so now what I'm gonna do is get one of these brushes, a little bit of Megilp, and into the darker region of the palette where we go. So a little bit of Alizarin permanent, and actually let's use ultramarine blue. So Alizarin permanent, ultramarine blue. Right, a really nice and rich dark. And now we're really going to start to push the value range. So we're going to put in the dark for the pupil. Very simple. So the little dark shape there is the pupil. And now how about we look for evidence of that pupil on the other side. Very simple. Now we're going to get into an extreme close-up pretty soon, so how about we get a little bit of a highlight color. And for that highlight color, I think we'll just use the brush here that we've been using for the lights with the flesh tone. A little bit of ultramarine blue just to throw the color a little bit cooler. And even still, I'm not using any mineral spirits or any kind of brush cleaner, just because I have my brushes very well organized now. Make it a little bit cooler. I'm sorry if you heard that. Someone was trying to call me, but it's okay. Alright, so not straight white, but pretty darn light, and I think this will be a good value. And now I have the camera pretty much as close as possible to the painting, so let's see here. Where do I want this light? So there's a little tiny, super tiny glimpse of highlight right across the pupil. So even that might have been too much, so I'm going to go into the dark for the pupil. This is going to require a very steady touch. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to use my little tool here. So this is just part of a selfie stick. And this is actually almost impossible for me because my camera is really close to the painting. So let's see if I can do this. Very simple touch of highlight there, and pretty close, but not quite what I wanted. There we go. It's just a little, even smaller than that. Light touch. Very light touch there. And then there is going to be a pretty predominant highlight on the upper eyelid. So right over here. Throwing a little touch of light. And not too much. Just a single mark right there should be enough to read at a distance. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of sharpen this edge. There we go. And I think I'm going to put the same highlight right along here. So the nose, the shape of the nose is a little different. So what I'm going to do is return to the palette, into this little middle tone region of the palette, and I'm just going to get a little bit of cadmium red. And just about that should do. And again, remember, interpret. It's all about interpreting visual information. So it's all right if I leave this a little bit different, but I kind of want to adjust it. So the bulb of her nose isn't quite as round as I'm making it out to be. So I'm going to go ahead with this color and just push a little bit more of a rectangular geometric shape there for the wing, or sorry, the bulb of the nose. It's all about specifics now. Again, I'm not trying to copy, but still I need some more specific information. So let's return to the palette, and we're going to return to that sclera color, so the ivory black, the titanium white, and our medium, the neo Megilp, with a little bit of the flesh tone, just a tiny bit. And we're going to use that color to push a little more light here. A very, very light touch. So that on its own might be too bright. So we're going to add a little bit more ivory black to this mixture. Maybe create a little value scale here. So let's see how this does, this little middle value here. I think it looks a little better. I did just blast out the value for the pupil and the iris, but that's okay. As long as I get that light that I need, I can easily come back in with this dark brush. And again, it's very hard for me to paint with the camera this close. So I'm doing the best I can. This is actually very close to front and center with the painting, which again is very, very good for you, but very, very difficult for me. So let's push this over. There we go. Now, it's all about picking and choosing what information I want to describe and what information I don't want to describe. So let's see, I think I can have a little bit of a warmer tone into this region of the palette. So a little bit of cadmium red directly into this area. And we're going to put that warmer tone right over here. There we go. I just needed a little bit more light there. And now we're just going to pick out a little bit of a light shape right over here. Again, just using the value scale of the palette. And we're going to use that to further describe this shape here. So another thing about this filming style, I'm going to show you a little trick here, is I actually have the same shot for the palette and the painting. So I'm moving you down here. See that? I can easily, on my tripod, move the camera angles. But of course I'm not going to do that little motion because I think it'll not really add to the painting experience. So that's another interesting thing about the way I have the filming stuff set up. Just thought I'd share that with you. Just softening that little transition there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return to the brush with the lighter flesh tone, and I'm pretty much going to go right into this warmer kind of pinkish region of the palette. And I'm going to add a little more cadmium red, and I want a little bit more of a deep pink. So cadmium red, alizarin permanent. So alizarin permanent is getting kind of dark. Interesting. So this color should do. And we're going to use that to describe the highlights on the lips, so the lower lip. Now remember, there's a lot of stuff in the middle of this painting. a lot of the building of all of these shapes. So this really isn't this isn't in the sense a paint along video, just because I can't really show you all of the footage and then try to upload a video like that, because that again would be well over a couple hours. So this one is more or less to show you what you can do without the need of outlines. A little bit more of a highlight there. And a little bit more light here. And now I'm going to get the dark brush that I used to mix up color in this darker region of the palette. I'm going to add a little more medium to it. So just ivory black, a little bit of ultramarine blue, a tiny bit of alizarin permanent. And we're going to use this dark shape now to further draw out the how the hair falls on the shoulders and on the chest. So right over here. So again, the shape takes care of the proportion. If you observe the shape properly, you'll get the proportion. So again, I'm letting a little bit of the tone of the canvas show, and I probably should have mentioned what I toned the canvas with probably earlier in this video. So what I used to tone this canvas was actually a bunch of the paint that was left on my palette one day. I cleaned off the palette, and then I basically just combined all the colors together with my palette knife, and then with a little bit of the Oderless mineral spirits and a paper towel, I just kind of spread the tone all across. So that was what I used. I'll go ahead and fill in the rest of that shape down there. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't describe what I used to tone the surface earlier. It's kind of slipped my mind. We're just going to show a little bit of hair on the side there, and maybe we'll play around with some different colors to tone the canvas with. I don't know. I'm feeling like maybe we'll use like a purple or like a pink one of these days as a preliminary tone. Excuse me. So the shape goes all the way down to here. So the shape turns into here, and it actually starts to come together a little bit over here. So we're going to add just ivory black into that area, just letting it mix right into the colors that are already on the painting. Show a few little strands of hair back here, not that much. We don't need that much for that. It's going to go all down here. And we want some brush strokes to show through, just to kind of add a little bit of a vignette feel to this. Remember, vignette is the areas of the painting that you leave unfinished. So I'll tell you what. So we're going to use this same brush stroke. We're going to use a little diagonal line to see where the shoulders fall, and just a single brush stroke delineating the shape of the hair that's going towards the back. See that? Just the shape of the hair that goes towards the back side should be enough to describe where the shoulders fall. And I think that's going to be about it for today's painting. So it was pretty interesting. We had a blank canvas at the start of today's video, and we carried over through the entire painting. Well, I carried over through the entire painting, and we now have a alla prima portrait painting without using outline. So today's video is definitely to show you what is possible when you're only using shape. And of course, a little bit of knowledge of anatomy and structure goes into that. And again, if you want to see a more full-length portrait painting demonstration, I'll leave a link to my latest paint-along. Well, actually, that paint-along video, the one that I just finished, I don't know, 2 days ago, that one is much more like step-by-step for you to follow. This video is definitely to demonstrate, more for the demonstration and to give you the experience of what it's like to create a portrait painting without using outlines. That being said, I know that this hat looks really goofy. I'm seeing it on my little viewfinder, but it really helps out with my eyes. It's really protecting my eyes from the light that is coming in from the studio lighting. That being said, I really hope that today's video helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and as always, I'm really trying to bring the experience of creating these paintings to you. I'm really trying to bring that experience to you as much as possible. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and as always, I'll be back again very soon. And how could I forget? The ending of each painting is basically the ending of a very remarkable journey. Each painting on its own is a journey. I consider it an epic journey. So, palettes up. I know, it must be even stranger now because I'm wearing this hat trying to block the light from my eyes. But in any case, every time you finish a painting, or in this case, finish a study, raise the palettes, raise your palettes. That being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be back again very soon.